Atomic batteries to power. Turbines to speed.
Now, everything old is new again. America's entertainment pop culture talk show.
It may well possess a rudimentary intelligence.
I'm trying to think, but nothing happens.
Felt a great disturbance in the force.
Hello, I'm Mr. Ray.
Come on, Mark, like a dog for me.
Where's the goodies? Leave the gun. Take the cannoli.
I bet you wouldn't have done anything like this if Mom and Dad were here.
You filthy criminal.
Excuse me while I whip this out.
Go ahead. Make my day.
Here are your hosts, Douglas Viviani and David Cohen.
Welcome back to Everything Old is New Again. This is Douglas Viviani with the rather ravenous David Cohen.
Yes.
Why are you ravenous? What's going on?
Well, because we have two of our favorite guests back on this week, again, talking about their cookbook, and I just can't wait to dig in and try my hand at it.
And I've written, if you heard the show last week, it was a rather long introduction. I've written a little shorter introduction so we can have more time with them. But this week we have the pleasure of visiting with Dee and Paul Servino to discuss a little bit more Goodfellas, Star Trek we'll get into maybe, what it's like to be in the White House where the action is happening there, sculpting, singing, cooking. Paul Servino is not only a legendary actor who starred in Goodfellas as the Godfather Paulie. If you remember that, you certainly, I'm sure, remember that. But he's been in over 200 movies, TV shows, is a gifted singer, cook, sculptor. The best thing he may have done, though, I don't know, was marry his wife, who was the former consultant of George W. Bush, political pundit and show host Dee Sorvino, in 2014. I believe it was December 27th. How was that, for my memory? And together, they have co-authored their first cookbook, Pasta. I'm sorry, it's Pinot first, which is the wine, right? Pasta.
We know
and
what's on your mind.
Yes, I am Italian.
Thinking that pasta right now.
It's a love letter.
And the best good fellow in the world, Paul Servino. We're so happy to be here.
Absolutely. And listen, as far as we're concerned, we're having a great time talking about food and so forth, but I wanted to just start off with a little bit of a tickler here about something political. If Mike, you could play clip number 2, see if you could tell us which is the real Richard Nixon, the first one or the second one in this clip?
Brezhnev's reaction to the bombing of Hanoi and the mining of Haiphong was
Henry Kissinger,
very tough in rhetoric and really inconsequential in action. He made many tough statements, but he never did anything.
Well, as you know, most of my staff have weighed in against this incursion. They believe it will fail to achieve anything fundamental militarily and will result in crushing criticism.
David Cohen, I'm going to ask you first. Which was the real Henry Kissinger, the first or the second?
I believe it was the first one. But if you would have asked me that before we had Paul on the radio, I don't know how I would have answered.
Wasn't that tremendous? Paul, obviously you were in the movie Nixon in '95, and that was you. Tell us a smidge about getting into that character.
Well, the whole idea behind doing Dr. Kissinger was very simple. Most people, when they do a character like that, they do the voice and then they're done. As soon as I get the voice, I'm just about my starting line, because those are what we call in acting the externals: the voice, the walk, the look, the makeup. Those are externals. The hardest part of acting, for me, none of it's really hard because I was born for it. But the most daunting part of acting is finding the character. So I can do any dialect as soon as I hear it. I can do any sound. I can imitate anybody right away as soon as I hear them. And as soon as I heard Kissinger many years ago, I immediately knew what he was doing, and I did it with my voice, just as I did the preacher in Oh God. Now, I want to tell you, I want you all to come on up, you know. So I've done all kinds of things with my voice. A deaf lawyer who talks in this manner, I have to study very carefully.
So, honey, tell them who came running over to you saying, how did you do it?
Oh, well, that was, I was at a party after Nixon came out, big party, and a guy comes running up with his eyes almost crazy, and he said, how did you do it? Now, this was Rich Little. We had never met,
right.
But I, of course, knew who he was and was an admirer. And I said, well, everybody thinks he's doing this, pushing his voice down. That's not what he's doing. He's doing something called vocal frying, which is like that. So he said, my God, I've been trying to do him for 10 years. He said, I almost wrote you a fan letter. I said, why didn't you? And then I said, well, if the greatest impressionist who ever lived thinks I was good, I must have been pretty good.
And you were. We enjoyed it, I'll tell you. Dee Dee, we could say that you were a consultant to the president and so forth. I don't know. Did you have an opportunity to be in the working White House at all after the election?
Yeah, actually, that's what I was. I really wasn't a consultant. I was a staffer. I worked at the White House. And, in fact, I was there when 9/11 hit, so believe me. I mean, I had a great appreciation for the president and for the place and the office. So, yeah, I mean, it's always interesting to me when movies are made about presidents. So I have a fascination with the movie Nixon, with Paul playing Henry Kissinger. And, they get a good feel for the White House. Some shows do not. But I really have to say, I think Nixon, that role for Paul, may have been his best. I mean, I love Goodfellas and everything he does, but wow, boy, he was great as Nixon. And, yeah, I mean, I roamed the halls and I had the best pass and I was out and about and in the Oval Office, and it was a really wonderful opportunity and honor. But I'm much happier being married to Paul, and now I'm acting in movies and, writing cookbooks and mixing drinks.
I don't blame you.
I love that, but I'm having more fun now.
You said that the best thing I have done is marry this incredible lady, and boy, you can just put a line around that, put a circle around it, and send it up in like the Batman signal up above the sky, because that's absolutely the fact.
There you go. I'm glad I was able to pick that up and present that.
Yes, yeah.
And along those lines, Dee Dee, just for us, without the politics, just for us getting into what is it like to be in the working White House? In other words, I don't know, a daily activity, something you can tell us that we don't always hear. I mean, were you in the Oval Office? I know there was a lot of pressure, but there's ever any time where there's any relief of the pressure with, maybe a meal or a television show or a movie or something that they're able to, live, or is it all work and no play there?
The White House is actually very small, and the staff is small. When you go to the Hill, it's huge. It's like a metropolis. It's a city of its own. But the White House staff is small, so we work our, what's off. I mean, it's nonstop work. It's tough. But the one thing that I was honored to do, and part of my job, believe it or not, was dealing with Hollywood. And after I worked there, I said, I can't stand these actors. They're so full of themselves, and it's enough already. It's all about them. They're the most difficult people to deal with, them and their publicists and that sort of thing. So you would have never convinced me that I would be living in Hollywood now with a Hollywood actor after my experience.
Right, who would know?
But, the White House is a very stressful, wonderful environment. But boy, when you make a mistake, it's a mistake. So the pressure is on. When you're getting calls from Air Force One about a governor in another state being contacted or not, you better make sure that governor got contacted. Right. Everything counts. And now, with Paul, life is fun every day. It's wonderful. That was stressful, but it was certainly an honor. And the one big thing, to lean back to your question, what would you do for fun? Well, I held the movie list. If you wanted to go to a movie, people on staff, they had to get on the list. And so, we'd go to movies. We'd go to parties and we'd go to movies when we weren't working, and that was always a treat. So it leads back to the entertainment world. So Washington, what they say about Washington, it's Hollywood for ugly people. No, not everyone's ugly there.
My wife is gorgeous, by the way.
But that was said many times while I was there. That
take a look at the pictures in the book, you'll see how gorgeous she is.
Well,
Washington is Hollywood for ugly people. But boy, I tell you, when a Hollywood star will go to the Hill and testify for something, everyone's all over it.
See that.
And whenever I would bring in celebrities like, we had Mel Gibson and Bruce Willis, Dennis Quaid, a long list. But it was much harder to bring them in a Republican White House because the Clintons, they were Hollywood.
Right.
So,
we'll be back.
Anyway, it was fun. It was good.
All right, we'll be back.
And Hollywood really helped give us our entertainment at the White House when we weren't working, which was most of the time.
And I'll tell you what, that's what we're going to do. We're going to have some entertainment when we get back on Everything Old is New Again with Paul Servino and Dee Dee Sorvino talking about their new book, Pinot, Pasta, and Parties. Be right back.
Now, back to America's entertainment pop culture talk show. Everything Old is New Again with Douglas Viviani and David Cohen.
Once upon a time, the world was sweeter than we knew. Everything was ours. How happy we were there. But somehow...
Again, that is Paul Servino singing Once Upon a Time. We have Paul and the privilege of having his wife as well, Dee Sorvino, here to talk about their new book, Pinot, Pasta and Parties. You can get that on Amazon.com, of course. And I'll tell you, Paul, I'm not going to say you surprised me because I have heard you sing before, but your voice is unique, and I wonder, is it trained in any way, or is it just something that has come natural to you, or what?
No, I've been training since I was 16. I've sung at the Seattle Opera, at the New York City Opera. I did a gala at the Metropolitan Opera. They wanted me there, but I had something called acid reflux, which kind of put a total damper on my operatic career. I'm what's known as a dramatic tenor, lyric dramatic tenor. And no, I've trained all my life. I studied with the teachers of Gigi and with the teachers of Renata Tebaldi. I have plenty. And I've sung concerts. I recorded stuff on shows like The Baker's Wife. You can get these all on eBay. Carmelina. And I did a special on PBS called Paul Servino Sings with the Seattle Symphony Orchestra. So I've done a good bit of singing, not as much as I wanted to, because I had that problem.
Right. Along those lines, I would assume, besides playing Everything Old is New Again when you're cooking.
Only, yeah. That's all I listen to every day.
In the commercial breaks, though.
I rerun it. It's on a loop.
And we, of course, we have the website, everythingoldisnewagain.biz. We've got all our old shows there. I know you know that.
It's like, remember in Star Trek, they were on that loop, they kept exploding?
Exactly.
It's
like a bad dream.
That's what I have in your show. At the end of it, it explodes.
Right.
Well, I think there's something you all would like to know along those lines. Alec Baldwin reached out to me on social media saying he contacted Paul, and he asked Paul to introduce the New York Philharmonic when they were playing the theme from Godfather, which was amazing. So Paul agreed, and he did it. Alex said, Paul, you're the only one to do this. You sing opera. You know your music. We really want you to do this. So anyway, Paul does it. He comes out, and he gets a huge standing ovation for minutes, maybe 10 minutes. They love Big Paulie in New York. So anyway, I thought that was a fun thing, one of the performances. And Paul sang, and everyone loved it. And so I think Paul should give you a sample at some point.
Well, Paul, feel free. You have anything in mind?
Are you okay? Ready?
Yeah, I'm ready. You're being taped, too. Be careful. Wow, that's beautiful. That's beautiful. What is that piece?
That's a Neapolitan song called Sailor Boy, Marinarilla, the sailor boy who's in love, and he says, come, help me pull the nets. I'm a sailor, and I love it. I love life, and I want to hug you and hold you. And beside the sea, we will make love, heart to heart. So Marinara, he says, I'm a sailor, and I pull the nets, and for the joy of it, I could die.
How about that? And he pulled the nets in to pull fish in, I presume.
He's a sailor. He's a fisherman.
Just trying to do a smidge of a segue to the book itself. Certainly, you've got to have some fish recipes, I would presume, in the book.
Yeah.
And when I go cooking and when I look at a lot of these recipe books and a lot of these TV shows, inevitably they come up with some of these ingredients that I've never heard before, or something.
Nor should you even bother doing it. It's all too complex.
That's my point.
Let's see.
Yes.
Like, for instance, we have linguine with vongole, with clams. A very simple dish that everybody messes up completely. Yeah, we have lobster tails in here. We have shrimp dishes, scampi. So let me just give you an idea of how to make something very, very simply. If you want to shrimp with clam, everybody puts in, I don't know how many ingredients. I mean, they just do one ingredient after another, and they kill you. Oregano and this and that. My God. When you want to do, let's say, shrimp with pasta or clams with pasta, which is known as linguine alla vongole, Mongolese clams, what you do simply is put some regular, remember, do not cook. I don't want to have to come to your house. Use regular olive oil. imported Italian olive oil. And you can buy that. You put about about a quarter of an inch of olive oil in a large skillet. You slice the garlic. You slice maybe 3-4 cloves of garlic. You put it in the oil. You make it the color of toast. If it goes any further than that, you have to throw the whole mixture away, because then once it's black, it ruins the mixture.
Right.
So just when you've got it the color of toast, it's ready. Pour in the macaroni, or put that into the macaroni. Put a little salt and pepper, and I like in this red flakes, the chili pepper. That's better. That's what it calls for. In Neapolitan, we call that eau forte, the strong. So you put some salt, you put some eau forte, and that's all. Don't use chicken stock. Don't use anything else. Don't put oregano. All it is salt and pepper, garlic, and olive oil, e basta. And that's how you make it really, really good, because your sauce is olive oil infused with garlic. That's your sauce.
Right.
And you put that, and that's out of this world. The clams, you learn how to cook the clams at the book, or you're doing shrimp. They're easy to do. 3 minutes, they're done.
Right.
So these are things you got to buy the book for, and we teach you everything. It's very explicit.
Absolutely. And just so you know, and of course, Paul's family is from Naples. We were just in Italy for 3 weeks, and Paul can tell you about how they just bring the fish from the day, throw it on, and it's amazing.
You're in the Bay of Naples, right near what they call the Via Caracciola, which is the walkway of the Bay of Naples. We were in the Vesuvius Hotel, where Enrico Caruso, the greatest tenor of all time, died. He was Neapolitan. And what they do is they have the little boats come in right across the street. They take out these baskets of fish, bring them into the Zia Teresa restaurant, which is right there, or the Vesuvius. They bring them in a basket, and often, if you're there, they show it to you in a basket. They say, Signore, what would you like? And I pointed to one thing, and I said, what's that? He said, that's Sorvino. I said, good, I want that. 8 minutes later, I was eating it with pasta. Huh. That's the difference, of course. When you're in Naples, the food is out of this world.
I know, but honey, what is that, octopus?
No, that's a type of fish called Sorvino.
Okay.
It's right from the Bay of Naples. And then, of course, the clams. The last night we were in Naples, I had spaghetti with clams. Well, my wife took a look at that. She made it here a week ago, and hers was as good as the one in Naples. I hate to even admit that, but she really is that good. She made an arrabbiata one night that was out of this world.
Didn't they bring you live octopus one time, though? And then you were afraid that you were going to get sick eating it, and then they brought it back. And
they didn't bring it live, but what they do is everything comes right out of the water. I was sitting in Zia Teresa, the famous old 150-year-old restaurant.
Still moving.
The first time I was there, and I sit down, I'm looking at Vesuvius, which is off to my left, the volcano, and then I'm looking to the right, Vomito, which is up on the hill, where my father's people, my whole family is from. And I'm looking at the air and the sea, and I started to cry. It was my first time. I said, this is the roots. This is where I'm from. And the waiter had walked over to me and recognized, walked away. When I collected myself, he walked back and said, Signor Sorvino, posso fare io, which means, Mr. Sorvino, can I do it? I said, certainly. He brings out something called pulpo, which is the octopus, the squid, a little one with a little tomato sauce on it. Now, you must know that when I was a kid, I couldn't be in the same room with that stuff. Okay? I found it so repulsive. I just, the look of it just turned me off so badly. And I said, well, this guy is so proud of this. I don't want to insult him, but please don't make me throw up. I said, I prayed to God. I said, make me. So I took a bite of it. It was the best thing I ever ate. Then he proceeded to give me a meal. I had grown up on this food, but the produce in Naples, in Italy, is better than the produce in America. And I had a phenomenal meal. And, of course, I've always tried to emulate that here with Neapolitan food and the very best produce I can get.
And I learned that the best tomatoes are from that area because of the volcanic ash. So the produce is just different, and it is.
Great. This is what we're enjoying, is a conversation about food with Didi and Paul Servino, and we'll be back right after this on Everything Old is New Again to continue with a discussion of Pinot, pasta, and parties. Come on back, and Everything Old is New Again.
I know I'd go from rags to riches if you would all.
Now, back to America's entertainment pop culture talk show. Everything Old is New Again with Douglas Viviani and David Cohen. You're listening to Everything Old is New Again, America's entertainment pop culture talk show with Douglas Viviani and David Cohen.
His Raging Bull was generally conceded to be the best film of the decade of the 1980s, and now with Goodfellas, Scorsese has scored another magnificent achievement. This is a great film, a film about Scorsese's favorite subjects.
Oh, wow. They're going to have to fix that clip. Anyway, they're talking a little bit there, Siskel and Ebert, about Goodfellas, and this is Douglas Viviani with Ken Scalepi and David Cohen. We're enjoying an afternoon with Paul Servino and his wife Dee Dee Sorvino, the authors of the great new cookbook, Pinot Pasta and Parties. That was a little bit of Siskel Ebert talking about, the Goodfellas movie. And Paul, I wanted to ask you, do you feel that Goodfellas in some way might be a sequel or a bookend to The Godfather, in that the Goodfellas de-glorified, if that's a word, the glorification of the gangster and mobster movie that happened with The Godfather? And do you feel that the gangster movie kind of is going the way of the Western, or is it alive and well? That's kind of two questions there.
Well, I think the problem is finding good scripts. I wouldn't call it a sequel because Godfather was fabulistic. It was a myth. Gangsters never behaved that way. That was a different look at it. It was a mythical look at it. Mario Puzo was great, and then of course it was made into two great movies, three, but those first two were exceptional. Two of the best movies ever made, I think.
Right.
But then Goodfellas comes along, and is the third about gangsters. The third, I would say, let's put it this way. In terms of importance in the film, in film history,
right.
Goodfellas is certainly one of three of the greatest gangster movies ever made. But it is so different, I wouldn't be able to use the word sequel, but I would say this is another look, a different look at the gangster life.
Right. Right, and let's take another look at Paul Servino, the actor, into a rather powerful movie that you made for television that was referenced a little bit earlier. But let's just hear a smidge of a clip here and see if you can place this.
Since childhood is charged with a crime he can't understand.
Do you know about the murder?
LeVar Burton is the man called Dummy. Paul Servino is the deaf attorney determined to save him. Dummy.
So now that, no secret there, the name of it was Dummy, 1979 TV movie. Paul, that was terrific. You worked with LeVar Burton there, and it was a very unique product, I think, where you were a deaf lawyer and your client was deaf, and you had to defend that individual. What was it like to work with that product and with LeVar Burton in particular?
Well, LeVar is an old friend, and we became friends on that one, but we've been friends ever since. But the material was phenomenal. When I read it, actually it was supposed to be George C. Scott to do the role. Now, George, at that point in his career, wouldn't do it unless they let him direct it. And they said, no way. So he was difficult, and they iced him out. They called me and said, please don't be offended, we come to you second. I said, George is a monster star. I'm not offended. I'm happy for the opportunity. So what I did is what I always do, is I only had 3 weeks to work. I normally would like 2 months when you're doing a character of that complexity. So I immediately went to the Lexington School for the Deaf in Astoria and spent 3 days there making recordings, talking to teachers, talking to deaf students, talking to deaf teachers, and making recordings. Then I went home and got 2 tape recorders, which is what I always do, and put sentences that I had recorded on one, on a kind of a loop, and then the other one, which I would record into. And for 12 hours a day, 7 days a week, I worked this way, straight, for 3 weeks, to do deaf speech. I had to create 5 different years of it, which means 5 different dialects, because he was losing his memory of speech, went profoundly deaf when he was 12. So I, in my carefulness and the way I go to work, my sedulousness, worked very hard to create 5 different dialects. And once my recording sounded like the recording that I had on the loop, I would move on. So I got to the point where I could go in and out of these 5 gradations of deaf speech easily, because you're making a movie, you go from the end to the beginning to the middle. You have to be prepared for everything. Then when I got to Chicago to shoot it, I went to the Harper College Deaf Students Program and did some more research. And then we started to shoot. Well, when I started to shoot, the first 2 or 3 days, it was kind of letter perfect and kind of dull. And I talked to the director. It was a great director, Frank Perry. I said, I just don't feel it. I mean, I've got the sound, but it just doesn't feel right. He said, well, would you... And I was doing, the deaf person and using my deaf speech like that, which I had prepared absolutely in a correct fashion. And then he said, would you like to meet Lowell Myers? I said, are you afraid? I said, no, that would be great. So I met him. And here is this man, a handsome man, who spoke like this, with a tremendous amount of fire, and difficult to understand, but he was fantastic to talk to. I said, aren't you afraid when you're in, that you will not be understood? He said, don't I have the right to plead my case? When he was admitted to John Marshall School, law school, they didn't want to take him. He said, half of our regular students flunk out. How are you going to graduate? He said, I have the right to fail.
Right.
So he graduated second in his class. I said, how did you do that? He said, I wore out the books. It was an advantage that I couldn't hear the professor. So, but I went right after it and I put into the characterization that enormous, vivid personality, and I think it's one of the best things I've done. One of the things I'm most proud of.
I think it was
Dummy, but I don't think you can get it anywhere. I don't think you can find it anywhere. I mean, where'd you find the clip?
I found it on YouTube, believe it or not. YouTube's eating up or buying up a number of properties. I think you might be able to now see it there for a fee.
The entire film?
I'm going to say I think on that, Paul. I'm not 100% sure.
I think people who would see it would be really amazed. Forget me. The point is, this man was an astonishing man. He changed the laws in the country, wrote a book called Law and the Deaf, which changed the laws in the United States, all over the country, in terms of the incarceration and arraignment of deaf people. They used to throw them into nut houses.
Right.
They would shoot them if they were running away. No one was trained. They had no interpreters. So no one was trained on how to deal with these people. There was a lot of injustice committed towards the deaf community.
He was a man with a great heart.
One of the nice things about that is I think it helped a little bit there.
Right, and a great experience.
And in that vein, the way Paul works, he works harder than anyone in the room. And, of course, he's the best actor in the room, always. Warren Beatty told him that. And Warren Beatty's a legend as well, just like Paul. But Paul just did an episode of Criminal Minds Beyond Borders with Gary Sinise.
Right.
And they go to the table reading, and everybody's kind of half-assing it, like, blah, 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 blah. Paul gets in there, and he just wows them. Because when he does it, he always does it 100%. So that kind of made everyone else straighten up. And, in fact, he even made a joke to Gary Sinise saying, hey, don't overdo it there, or don't overact there, or something. That's just the way Paul is. And the episode was great because it was called The Monster of Florence. So,
right.
Paul played this psychopath murderer based on a true story. So it's a great episode. But anyway, Paul just always does everything 100%.
And I did see the episode.
I had to play an Italian doctor, retire, very wealthy, very arrogant, who happened to be a serial killer.
Right, exactly. And I saw that episode. This was on like 3 weeks ago or so.
Did you enjoy that?
I did enjoy it, and they didn't have you on enough because, and of course, that's always going to be the case in a show that you're not the star of. But the setup was like a half hour before or 20 minutes before they got to you, and then I think you just carried the day. I really enjoyed it, especially when you gave that look. This is inside where you gave that look at the restaurant to the camera, and they go, "He's playing with us."
That was awesome.
That was great. I love that. Memorable. But anyway, we'll be back in a few minutes on Everything Old is New again to continue talking about food and Pinot pasta and parties, maybe a smidge about Star Trek. We all love Star Trek. We'll be back right after this on Everything Old is New again with Paul Servino and Dee Sorvino.
This is Everything Old is New Again, America's entertainment pop culture talk show with Douglas Viviani and David Cohen.
In prison, dinner was always a big thing. We had a pasta course, and then we had a meat or a fish. Paulie did the prep work. He was doing a year for contempt, and he had this wonderful system for doing the garlic. He used a razor, and he used to slice it so thin that it used to liquefy in the pan with just a little oil.
There you go. That's Everything Old is New again. I should say that's Goodfellas. And it's a great clip, something we'll all remember if you ever saw Goodfellas. That's certainly a memorable scene that Paul is haunted with. Paul Servino was with us, as with wife Dee Sorvino. And you're haunted with that. There are people that bring you a razor blade and a little piece of garlic, and I think that they are the first one that ever approached you you with that. I'm
yeah,
sure
in
you,
restaurants. Yeah.
I'm sure you do that with good nature.
The managers, no less. You would think that is okay. Well, they might want us to come back one day, but Paul always takes it in stride, and so it's. It's nice. And this happens especially in New York, but really everywhere. But I wanted to let you know that there's a scene, since you played a scene with Ray Liotta, that Paul surprised Ray. So Paul can tell you about that. I think you'll enjoy knowing.
Sure.
Well, if you know the scene where I'm talking to Ray about, I don't want you to do that. You get involved with some of the stuff you're going to tell me, right? I don't want to end up in jail like Briggs.
Right.
You remember that scene?
Yes.
When I'm talking to Ray in the garden?
Yes, sure.
Well, he didn't seem to be paying attention to me. He was looking away. So I slapped him in the face.
Right.
I slapped him.
Ray didn't know it was coming. Paul just slapped him in the face.
And I gave him a whack. Well, that brought his attention. and at the end of the scene, I said, I'm sorry, Ray. He said, no, it was great. So... and Ray and I have become very good friends.
So obviously that wasn't scripted. Of course, you brought that to light yourself.
No.
And now when you watch it and you see Paul slap him, you see the look on his face. You kind of understand that. He really was surprised by it. Paul slapped him hard.
Not much of a stretch there, acting-wise, for the result. But before we get into some more recipes, and I want to talk about Pinot Pasta and parties a little bit more, I would be remiss because if you hear our show, we know we have a little bit of a Star Trek reference every so often in our shows, and we were just talking about Dummy that you were starring in '79 with LeVar Burton. Later on, you came back in 1994 to work with LeVar Burton in Next Generation, Star Trek: The Next Generation, and where you played, believe it or not, Worf's half-brother. And before you got into that, were you a fan of Star Trek or a fan of science fiction, or did you just kind of do this, I don't know, because you knew LeVar, or how'd you get to that point?
I have been a fan of Star Trek from the beginning. The first Star Trek where NASA used to shut down, I think it was on Tuesday nights when Star Trek was on. I was one of the first Trekkies. I've seen every incarnation of it. I ran into LeVar, and we'd seen each other over the years, and I said, that's a really good show. I really enjoyed it. I said, I think I might want to be on that show. He said, would you? I said, sure. So he said, let me bring it up. So he brought it up, and they wrote a part for me.
Wow.
And that's how I ended up doing it.
All but knowing LeVar Burton and getting a part. We are on the same wavelength. I've seen them all. I enjoy them all. We reference them. It's a great work of fiction that comments upon not great social commentary in their way. So we enjoy that, and I think that your role there when you faced off against Worf when we were about ready to strike him was memorable.
Yeah, he's a giant.
He was.
He's a big man.
He's been on the LA diets.
I'm a big guy too. Everybody thinks I'm a little guy. I mean, that's the prevailing assumption is that I'm 5'8". I'm 6'3". So.
See that? No, you were menacing there, and he was bulked up then, but he's slimmed down since. We need to pass to him, to Worf, the actor, the Pinot Pasta and Parties book to get him to enjoy some great recipes. And I wanted to ask you, we have two characters on our show that come on every so often, and one loves fondue, one loves barbecue, and they argue over that. We call it the arguments you love to have. With the cookbook itself, where is most of the recipes taking place? Are they taking place in the kitchen, a barbecue, in the a stove, an oven? Where are you cooking, or is it a mix of all different ways of cooking?
At home.
Well, no, it is a mix. That's what you're asking. I mean, when we do pizza dough, we make it homemade.
Right.
So, we've got a mixer, so we work with that. A lot of people, they'll get ready-made dough, and that's no good.
Right.
You got to make your own.
We make everything here.
Yeah, everything's homemade.
And so we
have not made homemade sausages yet, but that's next.
So you could teach us through the book itself to do it all, right there in the home instead of having to get some frozen thing here and there to add to your recipe, if that makes sense.
Yeah, exactly.
No.
It just runs it. I mean, if you get something that's already made, that's not going to work. And you were talking about the fight between fondue and barbecue. I think the big difference with Paul, I mean, we like both. But if there's an argument, and Joy is, are we going to put onions in the sauce or garlic? And I'm sure you probably can guess who the garlic guy is. But we don't put it together. That's one rule, Paul will tell you, that you do not use both at one time.
That's another thing. Don't make me come to your house. The Neapolitans do not use garlic and onions in the same thing because they cancel each other out. Garlic is tangy, onions are sweet. You put them together, you got no taste.
Absolutely. Now, Paul,
Neapolitan chefs never do that.
We've saved it for.
Nor do I permit it.
Absolutely, we saved it for last. Start us off a little bit on making your own gravy or your own sauce. I'm not going to ask for all the recipe, of course, but start us off so that and give the person that's really not done it before the reason why. Come on, put that jar aside and dig into this on a Sunday afternoon and make your own sauce.
Boy.
You know.
All right. Let's talk about a very, very simple thing. It's either marinara or fileta di pomodoro. The difference is one uses garlic, one uses onions. Okay, just get yourself some regular olive oil, very good quality imported Italian olive oil. Put about a little more than 1/8 of an inch in a big skillet.
Yeah, when he means regular, not extra virgin.
Not extra virgin olive oil. No, never cook with that.
Right.
Then you, if you're going to make a marinara, you slice 3 or 4 cloves of garlic. And if you want to know how, read the book.
Watch Goodfellas.
Or watch the movie, right?
Yeah, or you can, and so to that, you will add a couple of cans or fresh tomatoes, which we talk about in the book. You can prepare them, but the easiest way, I suppose, is, try to get the San Marzano tomatoes, ones from Italy, in that area. And then you squeeze them up, or you get the crushed ones, and you put that in the mixture. You put in 6 or 7 leaves of basil, if you can find it, and salt and a little pepper, and then you let that cook for about a half an hour, 35 minutes, and you're done.
And this is the other thing. Go buy some basil. Don't get it in the little jar that says basil. I mean, these the herbs are, they need to be real. You need to buy them, the parsley, and chop it up. Otherwise, it's just not the same.
And
it's a completely different taste.
Right, and what fun is it to cook?
Or if you have a house, grow it in the back.
Right, and what fun is it to cook without actually, chopping up something fresh and just using a jar? The other.
Oh yeah, well, but the basil, you just put 6 or 7 leaves in it, and it just cooks.
Right.
But what I'm saying is, that's the marinara sauce. You want to do it with onions? Put the oil, chop up a half an onion, put it in there. When it's caramelized, put in the tomatoes, let it cook 35 minutes. Salt and pepper, you're done.
And that's it.
And then you cook the pasta separately, of course. And when the pasta's done, after 8 or 10 minutes, depending on, you want to try to make it al dente, which is firm, then you add it to the skillet, or put the skillet into we tell you the proportions, into the pot with the pasta, and you're done. And you've got a dish for everybody. You feed 4 people that way.
Absolutely.
And you asked before, we use a lot of frying pans. We do. We
15, yeah.
We cook on the stove all the time, every shape, size, whatever It's just, I don't know why. We just kind of like having it right there to adjust.
Exactly. And
I mean, you want to do a roast, you can. I know how to do that too. Or you cook a pizza, you have to put it in the oven. But on the easy, quick way to cook well is on top of the stove.
We do a lot stovetop. We really do.
Well,
we're not big barbecuers. Since you brought that up,
right?
But for us, you cook the steak, in the frying pan, and works just as well.
And that's what we're going to leave off on and say, listen, we've had some great time with the authors of Pinot Pasta and Parties, Paul and D.D. Sorvino. We've had a real fun time. We want to take all of the rest of your day and cook with you and drink with you. And if you want to do that, get that book at Amazon.com, Pinot Pasta and Parties. Thank you very much, D.D. and Paul. We'll see you soon on Everything Old New Again.
Thank you.
Thank you.